pictures of this.
We can get a bag and throw a lot of this stuff need to go in the trash.
Yeah. Gotta get the box. Oh. Because of it's too much, it's a whole lot.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Waiting room. Sorry, I'm a little late. I was just setting some things up real quick. Inshallah, let's get this off. Okay. I'll be right there in 1 second. I just have one last thing to do. Inshallah. Trying to get a little bit organized for these. Excuse me. All right. Go with that one. We'll start in just a couple of minutes. I'm just finishing up a few things. I wanted to put it together in a PowerPoint so that be a better presentation. You might just that's joining us, and right now we're gonna start in just one moment, inshallah. Okay, last slide. All right. Okay, let's get back into it. So I got that going. We got the live going, I believe. Okay. On my phone. Inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining. Again, this is meant to be an open conversation. If anybody has any questions, any comments, any input, just jump in, turn your mics off, type a comment, whatever you want to do. It's a very informal conversation we're having, inshallah. I'm going to have like a format. And what I decided to do, instead of me coming up with topics every week, because I don't have time every week to come up with topics, I'm going to follow basically this book right here. I don't know if you guys can see it good, but ooh, maybe take the blurred background off. Let's do that. There we go. Is that better? No? Here, we'll just Google it. That's what we'll do. We'll use the internet. Sufi, it's called Sufi, the Sufi Lighthouse. Okay. And you can find it right on Amazon. Let's see. Let me share my screen. So that's the cover of the book. It's by Bill Whitehouse. You can find it right on Amazon. It's like 20 something bucks. It's a great book. It's gosh, like 600 pages. It is like the one thing, you know, other than the Holy Quran and the Sunnah, that really helped me put this stuff into perspective as far as spiritual abuse, Sufi cults, because it's written by a psychologist. He has multiple PhDs. So it comes from the psychology aspect of it. And it really breaks down about spiritual abuse. It gives you everything you pretty much like need to put this stuff into perspective. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but I'm very interested in how our minds work. And there's a lot of stuff that we may go through in this process of disconnecting from a cult, or even if we weren't part of a cult, dealing with family members that are in a cult. that this actually puts names and definitions and together, so you actually can recognize certain behaviors and certain thought processes that we go through. So I'm just going to go. That's what these weekly conversations are going to be. It's just me going through this book. Again, it's 600 pages. It is about, and it's not going to go through in detail. I suggest everybody get this book and just start reading it. And you don't even have to like read it in order. You can just pick a chapter like, hey, I want to learn about this. Let me read about it. There are, 54 chapters, right? And this guy, Bill Whitehouse, he's from Canada. He's a Caucasian brother, Muslim. But again, he's educated. He's got a doctorate in psychology. He's written multiple books. Let me pull up the chat. Like, salam, everybody. He's written multiple books on Sufism and spiritual abuse. He's started support groups and all different things. He's older now. I think he's like 70, 80 years old now. But for people that comes from TMOA, you'll read this book and you will actually think like, wait, this guy must have been in the TMOA Jamaat in Canada or something, because it's literally just like word for word describes everything that we've been through. So I'm just going to go through that and we can just have our conversation based on that. The first chapter is, let me stop sharing this screen. Okay, what Sufi order was he a part of? Can you add this book to the chat? So yeah, let me do the chat first. So I get it right on Amazon. The link in the chat. I'll put it on the YouTube as well, inshallah. But as far as what Sufi order was he a part of, he takes a stance and he writes a whole chapter on it. He doesn't actually name them. When you look into this stuff, you see people take different positions of whether they should name or call out the cult. And he's like, when he wrote this book, at least he was Sufi. I would say Sufi through and through. So like he had his justification. I don't agree with it, but he didn't want to name the actual group. And I think, and if I remember correctly, the way he justifies it is his experience with the group and the cult leader might not be the same as somebody else. So he didn't want to like paint that for somebody else, which was kind of weird to me. Like, I think it actually goes against the Islamic principle of enjoining good and forbidding wrong. But nonetheless, it's still a lot of good information in there. And I'm pretty sure he puts enough information in there that if people knew the group, they would know who he's talking about, but I have no idea which Sufi group he's talking about. Yeah, exactly. I don't agree with that position of that, because if you were abused by the group, then, you know, you'd want to protect others from it. Okay. Let's see. So let me pull up, let me share my screen again. Okay. I can't wait to start reading this book. I'm actually studying human behavior in the social environment. Yes, Baina, you would love this book. This is right up your alley. You know, and especially with you know, with our direct experiences and you getting you know, you having a formal education in this, you're going to probably be able to write your own book on this stuff, which will be a lot more compelling within this stuff. The stuff he went through is like light compared to the stuff that we had to deal with. But yeah, so let me share my screen. You like them? Someone came off mute. Yeah, no problem. If someone wants to say something instead of chat, go ahead. If you feel more comfortable just chatting in the box, that's cool as well. You don't have to turn your video on. You can just turn your mic on if you want to talk. It's okay. I get tired of hearing myself sometimes. Here we go. Sharing my screen. Where's the button? Okay, so let me share my screen. And so in the beginning of the book, he starts off with these frequently asked questions, and there's 10 of them that he has. And I'm going to so another book that, yeah, Lawrence, put the link in there if you could find it, the link to the book. So he said he read Human Nature by Robert Greene, and that was helpful for him. So yeah, put it in there. And once you put it in the chat, I'll copy it and put it in the YouTube chat as well. So yeah, anybody has any resources that has helped them. You know, a lot of people, like, for instance, one thing that we have to understand is that, okay, we're Muslim, right? And all the guidance that we need is in the Holy Quran and in the Sunnah, right? That doesn't mean that we can't use sources that are also helpful, and that using those sources might lead us to recognize where that guidance is in the Quran and the Sunnah, you know? So, but I like this book because the guy's Muslim and he connects the things to Islamic concepts as well. Go ahead, Lawrence. You had your hand raised. You got something to say?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks,
I'm
Salam.
at work. I'm at work right now, so I don't have the access to get the link.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you can find that book. It's a common book. It's like the 48 Laws of Power. You know, Robert Greene wrote a bunch of books. And
Okay. Okay.
the one you're talking about is basically like helping you through, you know, the Sufi coast, the Islamic groups and stuff like that. But Robert Greene was mostly general in dealing socially with people
hmm
who
Okay.
try to
Yeah.
scheme on you, whatever, when you're part of an organization.
Yeah. That's good to know. With, you know, just in general.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I mean, once you see these things, like once you've gone through this process yourselves, then, like, say you watch a cult documentary, you recognize, like, oh, all these things are the same. Even like last night I was watching, me and my wife were watching the Murdoch murders. And it's all like the same concepts of power, abuse of authority, manipulation. It's all the same themes, no matter what you go through. So if you can recognize those things, it can help, and you can explain those to others so that they can recognize them. So the first question that he asked is, or that people ask, is the Sufi path a cult? And actually, when you're talking to, especially like people in TMOA, like they'll say stuff like, oh, we're on a path, we're on a tariqa, things are different for us. And they kind of try to justify, when you start telling them, like, oh, you're in a cult, and you start explaining to them why they're in a cult, they try to justify it by saying, oh no, we're on a Sufi path, you know. Lawrence, did you still have your did you still have something to say? Because your hand's still up. Let me know.
No, no, no.
Okay, you good. Yeah, just jump in. You don't have, if you know, don't feel free to interrupt me as well. That's no problem. Let's see. Oh, Shukran Hani for sharing that link. Robert Greene, the book in 30 seconds. Oh, nice, mashallah. Get a nice little quick view of it. All right, so is the Sufi path a cult? So the one thing you have to understand is that there's no like set standard definition of a cult. Okay, like, you know, like how other things may have a set definition. Okay, for cults, we have to look at characteristics and weigh them, kind of, you know, there's a certain judgment in it. Does the Sufi path still equal retarded? Because some member of R2F once said Sufi equals retarded. So that's something we could touch on, because it's actually one of the questions, kind of relates to one of the questions we'll get to. So is the Sufi path a cult? No, there's no specific definition for a cult. And when you look at Sufi paths, Sufi tariqas, they actually have a lot of characteristics that could make it a cult. Okay, so the one thing that the author of the book mentions is that the one thing that they have in common is that these groups deceive in order to gain the trust of another human being. That's like the only one common characteristic. Okay, so if you look at like old school Sufi cult, right? You have people that are trying to be Muslim. They take bayat to their religious leader, right? And then they like follow their directions. They hear and obey and listen to all their directions. In a good environment like that, right there, that could sound like a cult, right? you're listening, like outside of Islam, you're listening to a leader, they're charismatic, they're giving you orders, and you're following those orders. However, in a Sufi cult, or not a Sufi cult, a Sufi group or Sufi tariqa, one that's operating properly, that person is supposed to be guiding you upon Islam. So the only thing that they're supposed to be telling you to do is stuff that coincides with following proper Islam. These Sufi paths become cult is when they start manipulating that. And that's what you call spiritual abuse. Okay, spiritual abuse is just like any other abuse, right? There's sexual abuse, there's psychological abuse, there's verbal abuse. Spiritual abuse is using, how do I say, like the divine, using a religious position or religious text to manipulate and take advantage of somebody. Okay, and cult leaders aren't the only people that use spiritual abuse, right, or to extort. Okay, so spiritual abuse can end up in a lot of different forms. For instance, say a husband, right, he could spiritually abuse his spouse, right, by, like, say for instance, forcing her to have sexual relations with him, right? Say she's like got the flu and like she, whatever. She has a valid excuse like not to be intimate with her husband. But then he'll come and say, and he'll use like the hadiths that, oh, you can't refuse me, to force himself upon her. He could be saying, no, that's a form of spiritual abuse, right? Another example of spiritual abuse could be, say, for instance, like a father not educating his daughter, right? And he could say, oh, the best place for a woman is in the house, which is true, but you still have to educate your children. So it's a way of using Islam or any religion to manipulate a person in a way that actually goes against the real true intent of whatever the religious text is saying. Okay. Sufi cults use these same type of tactics, right? They spiritually abuse or manipulate people to get what they want out of somebody. And the most important thing that we have to identify here is that trust, like there's things called power currencies. Anything that gives you power is called a power currency. Okay, it's something that puts me above somebody else, not necessarily above them, but when you have power over somebody, you can use that power to make them do something. Okay, so for instance, physical strength, that's like the obvious one. Physical strength is a power currency. I could force somebody to leave my house. I use my power, my strength to get them out the house. Or say, for instance, eloquent speaking. That's a power currency. I could use my eloquent speaking to get someone out of my house. Okay. Or trust, right? Trust is also a power currency. If someone trusts me, they will just listen to me and say, hey, it's best for you to leave my house. If they trust me, they will leave my house. Okay. So in cults, in spiritually abusive groups, trust is that main power currency. Once you give up trust, then that person has power over you. Okay. So when you look at, and I was having this conversation with somebody, actually it was yesterday, and they mentioned how they were speaking to somebody, and they said in all these cult groups, what happens is once it's so easy for these people to like ignore God, whether it's even the Christian context or the Islamic context, because we talk about this all the time, like in TMOA with our own experiences, people ignore an ayah of the Quran. You can come to them and say, Allah said this, and Rasulullah said that, and they will respond with, well, my sheikh said this. So they're actively ignoring Allah and their prophet to listen to their cult leader. Why? Because they trust their cult leader. So that trust gives an avenue or an access for that cult leader, or whether it could be the leader could be one person or a group of people like the Shura Council, right? That could just get people to do whatever they want. So one of the quotes I highlighted is he says, once trust is given, almost anything becomes possible as far as the exploitation and manipulation is concerned. And look at that. Like Mubarak Jelani had these people killing people, bombing innocent people, living like starving themselves, living in deplorable conditions, giving up all their money. Like you could, once they trust you, right, and they think that, oh, you're a representative of God on this earth, they're going to trust you because they think you're speaking for God. So yes, but in general, to answer that question, a Sufi path is not necessarily a cult. You have to look at the characteristics and you have to weigh those characteristics. If you go online and you look at, you can just type in Google Sufi cult, or not Sufi, cult list, cult characteristics, and there's all these websites will pop up with all these lists of characteristics of cults. And just because a cult doesn't check every box, or a group, just because a group doesn't check every box, it doesn't mean that they're not a cult, right? It could be that they are heavily representative by one or two characteristics, and they're taking advantage of people. That makes them a cult. Like, for instance, one common cult characteristic is that cults generally go out and they're very heavy on recruiting new members. We know that in TMOA, they're not actually heavy on recruiting new members, right? They don't care about giving dawah or people coming in. They're happy with just people giving birth and having babies in the cult. So they don't check that box, but they do check the box of there's a leader who takes advantage of them, who takes their money, who represents God on earth, who they're isolated. They think they're the only saved group, like all these different things. Okay. So that's the first question. If there's any, let me check the YouTube, see if there's any questions. Nope, no questions on Zoom. And if anybody has anything to add, please go ahead and just jump right in. Let me see. Okay. So go to the next question. What is the most difficult aspect of spiritual abuse from which to recover? Okay. And he says, it depends on the individual. Okay, and we know that for ourselves, like especially for those of us who have been in the R2F chat group, or who have connected with other people who have been from cults. We all have our own things that we're like getting over, or have gotten over, or have affected us differently, right? For some people, it may be financial. Some people might be psychological, others emotional, social issues, or, the worst is the spiritual effect that it has. A significant amount of people, because of their experiences with a cult or even an Islamic cult, specifically like with the one that we're experiencing with TMOA, they actually leave Islam, right? They leave Islam, or they went through a period where they like left Islam or stopped practicing how they know they should, and then they come back. We've all kind of went through those stages, some worse than others. Some actually leave Islam and never come back, which is very, very unfortunate. And that's the big risk of all this type of cult stuff and spiritual abuse, because like whether we could have financial issues, we could have psychological issues, we could have emotional issues, we could have social issues and all these different things, right? But if we lose our deen, that's the only reason why we're here, is for the deen. That's the biggest risk, is us losing our religion, right? Leaving Islam. And it's because, it's a psychological thing. Like, for instance, I'm pretty sure everybody has something that it's kind of like an illogical thing, like they don't like, right? Think of like maybe even like a food. Like, for instance, myself, I got real sick. I used to work out, right? I used to work out. I mean, I'm not working out now, but I used to work out a lot, lift the weights, right? And for those of us that exercise and lift weights and all that and try to get muscles, and like I was taking creatine, which helps muscle development. And I was taking creatine, but during that time, I also got sick and I had to have my appendix erupted, and I had to have my appendix removed. Like, I almost died, right? I mentally associate that with taking creatine, even though it probably had nothing to do with it, right? So I'll never like take creatine again because of that negative association. So people that leave cult groups, right? When they think of Islam, they think about the abuse they suffered in the cult group. So they become one thing. And Allah knows best, but these people that inflicted this abuse and this trauma on them and like caused them to leave Islam and caused them to associate this negativity with the beauty of Islam, that's on them, right? So that's the biggest risk. We had a question in here. It says, have they left Islam if they were never really in the religion, i.e. TMOA, Jelaniism? That's a good question. And again, I think it goes right back to it depends on the individual. Because we know the core beliefs of TMOA, they clearly are not Islam. Clearly take someone out the fold of Islam. If someone believes in, understands, and knows about the seven sultans, like that's not a Muslim, right? And there's other beliefs as well. But we also know that a lot of people in TMOA had no idea what this stuff was about, right? They have no idea of basic Aqidah in Islam, of what takes them in and out of Islam. So there's an ignorance there, right? There's a certain amount of ignorance there that Allah knows best, that I say for the most part, like, these people are Muslim until they demonstrate that they actually do understand, believe in these beliefs that actually take them out of Islam. And that's between them and Allah, really, So even if they never were Muslim, technically, it at least prevents them from becoming back to Islam, because they're like, no, in Islam, they beat kids. In Islam, they chain people up for going to public school. In Islam, they extort your money, right? That's not Islam. That's TMOA. That's a cult. Let's see. So someone raised their hand. Okay, we think we're good. Whoops, I skipped the question. All right, so he also mentioned that one of the biggest things that people have to deal with is that sense of
Assalamu alaikum.
betrayal. Like
Hello?
Islam.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
go
was
ahead.
just saying, like, some people just left because of how they were being treated.
Mhm.
Like, some of that stuff was, you clearly say it was inhumane,
Yep.
but they lose their practice of Islam, the strength of losing. Like, they don't practice as strong as they did when it was in the cult. I mean,
Mhm.
I know a lot of people, they have a hard time dealing in that manner.
Yep. Yeah, it's really tough because, like, once you think that the cult represents Islam, like, that's a very bad thing, right? Imagine being like a child of one of these people who, like, you find out, like, oh yeah, he used to kill people or he planned to bomb people, and you think that's a part of Islam. Like, that's it's clearly not, or like, you see people get jumped, beat up, their property taken, their houses taken, right? That's not Islam, but that's business as usual in the cult. So this sense of betrayal and mistrust. He has a quote. He says, long after many of these kinds of problems are resolved, there remains a lingering paralysis of trust and one's willingness to invest that essential part of ourselves in anything else, whether it be oneself, another human being, or an organization of some kind. So this is actually very key. And this, I think, like, as far as all of us who have left the cult, right, we still have lingering issues. Let's see, some of the stuff you go through makes you question Islam. You must study and learn on your own and retrain your brain. It's difficult. Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Everybody that we kind of, when we talk about this, we all like have the same experience. Like, yeah, I had to learn Islam all over again, right from like ABCs, learn how to make salat again, learn what La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam means, like right from the beginning. So good point. But this aspect of trust and betrayal and how it affects us, like, moving forward. So, like, I've noticed, even within myself, there's always, and I think it's some of it is healthy, but for some people it's not healthy. There's a skepticism with any other type of Islamic scholar, right? You see an Islamic scholar, they might have a following, they might be saying something, and when they say something that we don't like or don't agree with, we automatically like, oh yeah, this guy's trying to get over on people. We have this skepticism towards them, right? Which is good to a certain extent, but at the same time, as Muslims, we are supposed to, like, people that are trustworthy, that are proved to be trustworthy, that actually follow the Quran and Sunnah. It is okay for us to trust them to a certain extent, but we also know that that trust, that true trust, ultimate trust, should be with only Allah. Should only be with Allah. But also, we have to look at, some of us, we may be having problems in our personal relationships, whether it's with our family members, whether it's with our spouses, our children, or even with like getting our own lives going again, because like we're skeptical about even ourselves, right? We're skeptical about giving our trust to anybody, so that's something that, I'm not a psychologist, but that's something we all kind of have to work through even after leaving the cult. Okay. Fourth question. See if there's any questions. Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam, Lucia Mosley. How you doing? Okay. Where's the chat go? All right. So the next question is recovery just a matter of time healing all wounds? And again, this is another, there's no one size fits all for everybody. Like most of us will probably be dealing with the after effects of the trauma for the rest of our lives. There's people are affected differently. Not everybody might not have the same experiences. Like for instance, someone may recognize that they were in the cult and leave the cult, but never have not one negative like experience. Like everything was fine for them. They just paid their membership dues and lived their life, and everything was a-okay. They might not have anything to really get over or heal from, besides that they lost thousands of dollars giving their percent, which is, once you want that, time will heal that, because you're going to get back on your feet and you start living your life. Other people might have suffered sexual abuse. Others might have suffered physical abuse. Others might have like lost their family and friends and all these other things. So everybody's going to be different. But one thing that he did point out, which is very key, and which is really like one of the backbone premises of even why we have R2F, is that he says individuals who debrief, disengage, or connect with others heal faster than those going solo. So what is that saying? It helps to go through that journey with somebody else, connecting with others, whether it be like a therapist or someone who specializes in like cult debriefing or these types of things, a counselor, an imam, someone that is trustworthy and following the Quran and the Sunnah. Or just like how R2F did, is we just formed a chat group and started adding people who left TMOA, and we just talk about things. And it's amazing when we look back at, I think it was like 4 years ago now that we started R2F, 4 years ago. And if any of us that are still in the chat, or anybody that was in the chat at one point and left or whatever, 4 years ago, there was people, it was very deep, the type of posts and messages that would be in that room. There'd be people coming in there crying, pouring their hearts out, very emotional, to the point now where, like, alhamdulillah, within a quick period of time, you go from posting messages that are like, making people cry, making people sad, to now like we're all joking and laughing with each other about our experiences that we went through. Right. Whereas people that I've seen, people that have trying to deal with this by themselves, like, yeah, I don't need anybody. I don't need to be in a group. I don't need to talk to anybody. And you see that they're like stuck in the same place they were 4 years ago. Right. Let's see. Again, if anybody has anything to say, just go ahead and unmute, interrupt me, and just say what you got to say. So it's very important to connect with others, and especially connecting with others that have went through the same experiences, even your own family. Like it's the technology nowadays. Everybody has like some kind of family chat room, right? And your family chat room might have people that are not in the cult, that are in the cult, and maybe some people that are like in between. I would advise that you set up a chat group with just the people that are clearly out of the cult, because you can only have certain, excuse me, water. You can only have certain conversations with certain people. So when you start a separate chat group with, say, just your family members that are clearly out of the cult, you will notice that you guys will talk about different things, and it's a different way of healing if you need that. Or just stay in your family chat group and just talk about the same things to help guide them, Allah knows best. But like Amr says, large group therapy works, and we at R2F are witnesses of that. We're witnesses of that. Okay. Did I skip a question? I think I did. Yeah, I did. Let's see. Okay, so here's another question. Are only certain types of personalities or developmental backgrounds drawn to situation of spiritual abuse? So this goes to Amar's question: is the Sufi still equal retarded? Right? So and that's a misconception with with cults, is that only people that are stupid, weak, emotionally disturbed, ignorant, you're a fool, only these type of people get caught in cults, right? And that's just a misconception. It's a total misconception. I wish I could find the study again, but I remember one study showing that actually people that are more educated are more at risk for being caught up in cults, because everybody's subjected to being taken advantage of. But people that are more educated actually find more creative ways to justify like the oppression or the transgressions or the abuse that is happening to them, right? They're very creative in their mind to find ways that, because you could justify anything, but and there's a negative connotation. So like even when we were first like out trying to give dawah to TMOA people, we're like, no, TMOA is a cult. And people will respond to like, oh, you think our parents are just stupid and that they just got caught in a cult? Are you saying I'm dumb and I just got caught in a cult? And it's like, okay, well, if you want to take that position, no, I'm saying we all were dumb and we were all fooled. But no, you don't have to be dumb. You don't have to be naive. You don't have to be a simpleton, right? You don't have to be someone who's like emotionally scarred or disturbed or anything. No, it happens to anybody, right? Every single person is vulnerable of being taken advantage of and being in a cult. So he says the only people that are only those pathologically incapable of trusting are immune to a cult, are immune to being taken advantage of, right? And I don't know if there's a clinical term for people that are pathologically incapable of trusting anyone, but that's not a good quality to have. We are supposed to trust people in general, right? But people in cults do tend to be people that may be vulnerable at some certain point. They may be going through some kind of life changes, family turmoil, or like a developmental transition in their life. Like that's why a lot of young people that are becoming adults would typically join cults, because they're looking for something. Or people, and this is very key, especially for yes, go ahead. Persian Empress, go ahead. Know what's your question?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, good morning. Okay, I had a
Good
question
morning.
in reference to many Muslims that you find around the world, but in particular TMOA, who have the Islamic belief that that is lawful to purify Islam through violence, that this was lawful, and more so their obedience, where they say obey, obey those in authority over you when that order is given to them. Yeah.
Yes,
Where's this line is
that's
drawn? Where is the line drawn with this?
so in Islam, right? Islam is as far as I know, the only all-encompassing religion, right? So, like in Christianity, I forget the line in the Bible, but it's like render unto Caesar what is Caesar or something like that, right? But that's their line, that they separate like religion from like state affairs. So Islam is perfect. So Islam also covers state affairs, which naturally, of course, also covers like war and violence and how we're supposed to deal with that, right? So there is an aspect in Islam that war, right? Legislated war that is from an Islamic nation that's ruled by imam of the Muslims, right, can engage in war to help spread Islam and get rid of oppression. Okay, which we know as Muslims, there's war in Islam is there's detailed of what we can and can't do. Okay, so no group in Islam around the world, right? A group like TMOA, a cult group, a Sufi group, or whatever you want to call them, ISIS, whatever you want to call them, can just say, you know what, I'm going to go do jihad to spread Islam. No one can do that. Why? Because there has to be an imam, an authority over the Muslims that decides, okay, we're going to war with this nation to get rid of the oppression there and spread Islam. Okay, so that's one of the common things. Like you'll hear apologists that will say, "Oh, Islam, like we only fight to defend ourselves." That's not true, actually, right? You see, the Muslims during the Sahabas and stuff, they actually went on offensive expeditions, right? It wasn't always about self-defense, but it's to spread the deen, the legit deen, when there's an actual, authentic, bona fide, recognized Muslim leader. So that's the first thing. So anybody like that's in like a group like TMOA, an organization or a small group that says we're going to use violence to spread Islam or carry out the mission of Islam or purify Islam. Nope, can't do it, right? You're violating Islam by doing that. So that's the first thing. Then anybody who's in a group, and this is the most common, he talks about this in the book, right? And when you go to the tafsir, right, and you go to, let's pull up the ayat actually. Let me stop sharing and pull up the ayat. Because this is an important thing that we all, especially in TMO, people from TMOA, need to be able to rebut this concept that people have in TMOA. Let me pull it up. Okay. What is this? In Surah An-Nisa, I don't know which number. Ayat, hear and obey those in authority. Surah An-Nisa, ayat 59. So let's go to Quran.com so I can have a nice view of it. 459. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, so let me minimize this. There we go. Okay, 459. Close this. There we go. Better view. 459. Allah says, "O believers, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority among you. Should you disagree on anything, then fear it, refer it to Allah and his messenger. If you truly believe in Allah and the last day, this is the best and fairest resolution." So what you will see in all deviant groups of Islam is that they love only quoting part of the Quran. They love quoting only just bits and pieces. So the part that we commonly heard in TMOA was this. They would say, obey those in authority. Let's see if I can do it. Obey those in authority among you. Right? That's all they would quote. they would even skip obey Allah and obey the messenger. They'll just say, hear and obey those in authority amongst you. Hear and obey those in authority above you. Hear and obey those in authority above you. That's only obey those in authority among you. That's 6 letters out of this whole paragraph of an ayat, right?
Mhm.
So that's the first thing, right? Allah says first, obey Allah and obey the messenger first, okay? So that right there, without even reading the rest of the ayat, we have to say, okay, I have to obey Allah and obey the messenger, and then I have to obey those that are in authority above me. But okay, so I do have to listen to those in authority above me, but that can't violate me obeying Allah and the messenger. Then Allah clarifies that by saying, could you disagree on anything, right? He's not, when he's saying this, the disagreement isn't about disagreeing with Allah and his messenger, right? Because we can't disagree with them. He's talking about disagreeing with those that are in authority above you. So he says, if you disagree on anything, anything, right? So if they say if your leaders say anything that you disagree with, that you're questioning, they're like, wait, that doesn't sound right. Then Allah says, then refer it to Allah and his messenger. If you truly believe in Allah on the last day, this is the best and fairest resolution. So Allah is telling us right there, the ayah explains itself, right? Hear and obey Allah, hear and obey the messenger, hear and obey those that are put in authority above you. But if you disagree with those that are put in authority above you, then go back to what Allah and Rasulullah said. Go back to the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? So no one can come and say, hey, give us your money, hear and obey. Take bayat, hear and obey. Take bayat to a female imam, hear and obey. Go kill somebody, hear and obey. Go blow up this building, hear and obey. Don't ask questions. No, because that's disobeying Allah and his messenger. And I'm going to tell an interesting story because it's always great because we go back to the tafsirs, and I posted this in the room, I think it was early in the week when we were talking about something related to this, is the tafsir explains this ayat perfectly, okay? So during the time of Rasulullah, and I forget the names of the Sahaba, so forgive me, there was a military campaign, and Rasulullah he put a certain Sahaba in charge of the military campaign. Okay, so the Sahaba was in charge, and they're off at a campaign or something. And I'm getting some details, but I'm gonna get to the gist of the story. Is that some of the Sahabas disagreed or didn't do something the leader said. Right? They made him mad somehow. The soldiers made the leader mad, the general mad. So the general told the Sahabas, he said, start a fire and line up and walk through the fire like he wanted to burn them so that they could get burnt and be as a punishment to them. So one of the younger Sahabas was in the line. They're about to walk through this fire. I was like, wait a minute. This ain't right. We ain't doing that. Right. And then the general that was in charge quoted this ayah. He said, hear and obey those. I'm in authority above you. You have to hear and obey me. Rasulullah, and he's put in charge directly by Rasulullah. Rasulullah was alive. He said, Rasulullah, put me in charge. You have to listen to me. You have to walk through that fire. So then the Sahaba started like, okay, wait a minute. Does that mean that? What does it mean? They started debating amongst each other. They said, well, let's go ask Rasulullah. So they went back to Rasulullah and asked him directly. And Rasulullah said, if any of you walked in that fire, you and the leader would have been in the fire, as in the fire of hell. Of course, because if they would have obeyed him, they would have went to the fire because they're disobeying Allah and Rasulullah. So the explanation of the ayat actually explains how you are not supposed to hear and obey when your leaders give orders that are contrary to what Allah and Rasulullah said. And it is very clear. So if anybody from a cult or TMOA ever brings this hear and obey stuff up, like you have the ammo to easily refute their false understanding of what hear and obey actually means. Let's see. I'm gonna check to see if there's any questions. I'm gonna stop sharing. Dun-dun-dun. Okay, stop sharing. Are there any questions? So that cancels out TMOA. They do the most for the worst. Yep. So one can't follow blindly. Yep, you could follow blindly only in very limited situations. And most times in the Quran and the Sunnah, it's called taqlid, the blind following, and most times that you hear references to blind following in Islamic context, it's a negative connotation to it. Let's see, any other questions? Yes, trust is a great problem. Can you give me more information about the chat? Yes, it's an R2F WhatsApp chat. I'll put my number in here, just message me. We have our own limited little process just to make sure like people are okay to enter the chat. WhatsApp message, and it's just people that join in the chat and we talk about everything really. We talk about TMOA stuff. We talk about general cult stuff. We talk about general life stuff. There's men and women, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, all in the chat, parents and kids. And we talk about anything. Like we just don't sit there and talk about TMOA all day. We call them gender wars, where we'll have the females battling the males about certain topics. It's just a social network for all of us that had the same experiences. And it's been a great tool. Even I'll say for myself, even my own life, it's been a great benefit to me, and everybody else that's been in the chat has said it's been a great benefit. So if you'd like to join, just message me on WhatsApp, and there's just a few questions I ask just to make sure we're on the right mindset, and I just add people to the chat. There's only about like 20 something people in the chat right now. So if you're interested, Lucille, about getting in the chat, just shoot me a message, and pretty sure we can get you in there. And anybody else as well. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, just a quick warning. Like we are, we all come from like the same kind of background. So we're all from TMOA. We joke a lot about whatever. We're very open, but I think, just a little side tangent, the best thing about the chat is that I think it's a good representation of how Islamic, not even just Islamic, just general, how group dynamics should be. Like, we're not echo chambers. People have different opinions. We will have healthy debates. We don't submit to just one person. There's nobody in charge of anything. We recognize and respect everybody. It's actually a very, very, very good chat. So, but you have to be ready for it, because we do joke a lot and we are very opinionated naturally. But it's a good place to be. All right, so let me get to the last question here. How to take steps in getting your Islamic rights to make the cult leaders and followers hear you. From my experiences, well, let's say the best answer to that is that it has to come from like a group, I think. And you see how the effect of R2F is just a bunch of individuals coming together and putting out, trying to get heard. Individually, like one of us isn't getting heard, we're just gonna get ignored, right? So when you come together with other people, you actually become more powerful and you become a stronger voice. Where 4 years ago, we were R2F. People in TMOA were like kind of paying attention, not really paying attention, mostly trying to ignore us. People in TMOA, leaders in TMOA were saying, don't watch them, they're nothing, they're barking dogs and all that, right? Where now, just a week or two ago, you have their imam making complete references to R2F, which shows that even the imam of TMOA, Zainab Adams, is watching our content. So they're hearing us. As far as actually getting our Islamic rights, I wouldn't put too much hope on that. I don't have any hope of getting my Islamic rights from a group that doesn't practice Islam. So our rights Allah is just. We will get our rights, but most likely it'll happen at a place where it's detrimental to them, and that's on the last day of judgment, or that's on the last day, the day of judgment, where we all get our rights, where justice is served completely, where for those who violated us, who oppressed us, who transgressed us, we will get we will get their good deeds, right? We will get their good deeds if they do not seek forgiveness and restore the rights that they denied from us. We will get their good deeds. And when they run out of good deeds, they will take our sins. We will give our sin to them, like, all right, take these. So that's the justice. So I'm not even like, really, we're gonna get our rights. And it would be nice for them if they give us our rights and seek forgiveness in this world, but I wouldn't expect it. Like, for instance, Mubarak Jalani, he transgressed, oppressed, and violated thousands of people. Allah knows that. Well, we know that he hasn't sought forgiveness from those people, at least not all of them. We have no idea whether he died upon whether he sought forgiveness from Allah from that. Either way, the people that he did not directly give them their rights or seek forgiveness from them, they're going to get a portion of his good deeds on the day of judgment. And if he runs out of good deeds, if he died upon that falsehood, then none of his good deeds are going to count to him anyway. Then people will unload their sins on him. So we're going to get our rights. Let me get the last question here. We're running out of time. I think so. We covered that question. I think this is the last question. Okay, so last question here, and there's 5 more questions we'll cover next week, inshallah. It says, once someone recognizes the abuse/cult, isn't leaving straightforward? The quick and short answer to that is no. It's not straightforward, as many of us know this, right? Even for ourselves. It took me a good, I would say, 3 to 5 years to actually like get up to like, okay, I need to get out of here, right? Especially within like the last 3 years, like around like 3 years before I left, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this is a cult. Still like 90% is a cult, but still like 10% hold me back, right? And so it took years to get out. We know people that are like recognizing certain falsehoods, but still can't get out. We have people that are outright denouncing the TMOA beliefs, everything about TMOA, but are still in TMOA because they have family, friends, or they're somehow economically, whether it's their homes on the lands or connected somehow, that they can't just like upright and leave. Okay. Some people go through this phase. Well, not some. A lot of people go through this phase where like they're actually doubting the realities. Like they're recognizing that, oh, the sheikh, the stuff he's doing was wrong. Everything's wrong. But then they start doubting themselves because like, well, maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe this is shaitan influencing me. So it's very, very complex. Even after recognizing being in a cult, even after recognizing that things aren't Islamic, it's still a maze to trying to get out. And the best way to get out is just to keep making dua to Allah, right? When we make our salats, when we're saying to Allah, we're making dua to Allah, Ya Allah, guide us on a straight path. Really think about that and really put your heart into those duas. Like, Allah, please guide me on a straight path. When you're sincere and you're making that dua and you're calling out to Allah after every salat, you're getting up to Hajjat, you're reading Quran, and you're like, Allah, guide me, guide me, guide me. Send me signs, guide me to what is right. He will guide you. You will see things. Like, you'll have questions about something. Like, everybody has the same experience. So many different people that when they were working their way out of TMOA, they'd be researching Islam. Like Sister Baina said, like, you have to learn Islam. You have to do that even before you get out. Start relearning stuff. You'll have questions like, wait, the sheikh said I should make tawaf around the masjid, right? And that question will pop in your head, like, is this right? And without you researching it, without you looking into it, something will pop up that will show you like, oh, we're not supposed to do that. You could be listening to a random video on YouTube and something like, hey, guess what? You're not supposed to make tawaf around shrines, around masjids, except for the Kaaba, right? So like all these different, Allah will just start sending the guidance. If you come to him and say, Ya Allah, guide me. This even goes to people that are actually in TMOA fully on the juice. I challenge all of them to sincerely say, Ya Allah, guide me to the truth. If following TMOA and Mubarak Jelani and all these beliefs, if that is false, guide me away from the falsehood. If it is true, guide me to it. That's a dua I used to make all like early on a lot when I was starting to have questions. Ya Allah, if this stuff is true, if TMOA is true, and Mubarak Jelani's teachings are true, guide me to it and put it in my heart. Ya Allah, if it is false, guide me away from it and guide me to true Islam. If you are in TMOA and you believe everything that you're doing is true, make that dua. Make that dua every day and see what happens. Oh, I got a chat.
Assalamu
Islam,
alaikum.
go ahead. Mhm.
When I first left, a person told me Allah Ta'ala gotta break your heart to save your soul. So I'm gonna just leave it at that.
And that's a tough one too, because unfortunately, a lot of people that end up leaving the cult only wake up after experiencing some kind of direct trauma. And it's difficult because, like, for instance, alhamdulillah, myself and I know a handful of others actually woke up to it being a cult and left the cult or took steps to leaving the cult after they recognized it was a cult. There was no trauma. There was nothing bad that happened to them, right? There was nothing like the stuff that happened to me happened after I recognized it was a cult, after I started taking steps to leave. Then they tried to punish me for what I was doing. Same thing with other people, right? But some people didn't wake up until like they lost their family or they lost their house or they got jumped or something like that, right? And it's one thing we have to recognize is that throughout this process, Shaitan and his soldiers are always at work, right? So that trauma that Allah had happen, whether it was like a forced divorce, your kids cutting you off, someone stealing money from you, someone kicking you out of your house, someone physically assaulting you, someone chaining you up to whatever it is that that sparked that thought like something's not right and that led you on your path to escaping the cult, that came from Allah. Even though those people are still guilty of transgressing you, that still came from Allah. And you actually have to kind of be a little grateful to Allah for like you said, like giving you that smack to like wake up. Because if everything was going hunky-dory, you might not have woke up, right? And then the trick comes in, because then after you wake up, then instead of you focusing on being grateful for Allah waking you up, learning your deen, improving yourself, getting your life on track, because you focus on the trauma, right? So say they kicked you out of your house, they kicked you off the land and your house. Then someone, like, there's no problem with trying to get your rights, right? But the priority for us who leave cults, Islamic cults especially, the priority for us is to learn our deen and connect with Allah, not our Islamic rights. So you should try to get your Islamic rights, whether it's like getting custody of your children, getting compensated for them stealing your home, whatever. But there has to be a limit to that, because what Shaitan will do, he will manipulate us to focus on that. Our lives become about getting back at TMOA, right? And it's something you hear the cult members go on about all the time. Oh, you're just mad, your butt hurt, you're just trying to get vengeance. Let me tell you the best way to get vengeance. And it kind of relates to a quote that it's been stuck in my head ever since I heard it, so the quote is, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Because love and hate are very close to each other. They have a lot of the same characteristics. There's obsession, there's dedication, there's all these different things that love and hate are very close. You have to hate somebody, there has to be some sort of emotional attachment to them, right? But when you truly don't give two craps about them, That is actually the opposite of love. So I say that to connect it to, you don't want to waste your time and be so dedicated to trying to get revenge or get justice or prove you're right against TMOA, right? If you follow Allah's guidance, if you dedicate yourself to learning your deen, getting your life on track, living a good life, that is the best form of vengeance, if you want to say, versus these cult groups, right? Because then your mere existence becomes a refutation to everything they know and understand, right? Because in TMOA, I'm kind of rambling here, but we'll end after this. In TMOA, one of the things, and this is in all cult groups, right? They portray the narrative that if you leave us, your life is going to be horrible. You're going to go to hell. You're going to get diseases. Your kids are going to become prostitutes. You're not going to be Muslim anymore. Allah is going to punish you. You're going to get the wrath of Allah and all these different things, right? So when they see you on the street and they see you happy, not really like you're not trying to really engage, like even us in R2F, we give them dawah when we have time, right? I see these people every day. I either give them salams or don't give them salams. When they don't give me salams, I keep it moving. It don't affect me. They see that, oh, this person is like, wow, they see you in the street and say, wow, this person has a good job. They have a good family, taking care of their kids. They're learning Islam properly. They're practicing Islam properly. They look at you, and right there, while them seeing you, that is a form of dawah to them, because it refutes their whole thinking. Like, wait, that person is supposed to be having a miserable life. Why are they actually having a better life than me? I'm on this land struggling, living in these broken down trailers. I can't even drive to my house in the wintertime because there's no road. This person's off buying properties, living a good life, traveling around the world, learning their deen. I could tell that they're becoming scholarly. They're memorizing the Quran, whatever it is, right? Oh, that person's kid became a hafiz. That is the best form of redemption and restitution and vengeance, or whatever words you want to use to like getting back at TMOA. But it all has to be for Allah's sake. And Allah will make you successful in it. Everybody I know and talk to, after they left TMOA and separated from the falsehood, Allah has made their lives better in every way. People that lost friends, I was talking to an individual the other day, he was kind of upset because like dealing with the fact that their family members and their friends were like treating them different because they knew that they weren't in the Jamaat no more, that they weren't believing in the stuff anymore, right? But by Allah, Allah says in the Quran, what he takes from you, right? He's going to replace it with something better. We just have to trust in him. He'll give you better friends. He'll give you better family members. He'll give you better job. He'll give you better everything. So just that's really what we have to really focus on. So the question in the chat is, do you think there's any benefit to being in a cult? People aren't going to like to hear this, but yes, there's a lot of benefit to actually being in a cult. And that's the hard part of it about it, is why a lot of people don't leave. There's a lot of benefit to being a cult. There's just think about it. This is use our common sense for a little bit. Let me check the questions real quick before I go on another random tangent. Okay, good. No questions. What your WhatsApp number is? What's your name? Okay, Lucille. My WhatsApp number is the one I just posted. My name is James or Jaffer Griffin. So just message me, or any of your family or friends that are interested, just tell them to message me. And we can go from there. One of the questions, so I'll be answering Mubarak's question first, and because this is a deep concept, we probably should have a more detailed discussion about this. Let me get off this stop sharing screen. So, do you think there is any benefit to being a cult? So yes, there are plenty of benefits to being in a cult. So the main benefit to being in a cult is just the social aspect of it, right? It's fun to be in a cult, right? How many kids grew up in a cult? Like when you're young, going to retreats and stuff and being in the woods with your friends, playing basketball and Eids and all these different functions. Stuff is fun. right? A lot of us had good friends, right? Growing up in the cults. So that social aspect is there, right? That's a social benefit that you have for being in a cult, just like you have for being in any group. Just like, for instance, there's a benefit for being in a gang. Bloods and Crips join gangs for the benefits. Brotherhood, right? Solidarity, connection, uniformity. Okay, that's a benefit to being in a cult. One of the things that I didn't get to on the spreadsheet was what are the characteristics of people that actually do join cults, and this ties directly to TMOA, is some people need structure. They need, like, people that either one were like in prison, or people that come from like military backgrounds. They need a certain structure in their lives, right? And cult group provide that perfect structure for them. There's chain of command. It's authoritative. Someone giving commands. They need that to function in their lives. So that's a benefit to them, right? Depending on where you are in the cult, you can have financial benefits. Look at all the administrators in TMOA who are getting stipends, who are getting status and all these things for being in the cult. They don't have to. Look at Hussein Adams, right? Hasn't had to work to support himself in his entire life. Dude has 3 wives, multiple houses, multiple cars, travels all around the world, and doesn't have a real job. Or didn't have a real job. I think he has a real job now, part-time or something. I don't know, whatever. Volunteer, something, right? Got to go to college paid for, paid tuition. All the rest of us are in student debt and all these different things, had to work and take care of our families and go to school at the same time, where these people don't. So there's a benefit for them, right? So there are benefits, even like in TMOA, they have land, they have properties, these Islamic compounds, right? They're around Muslims, right? There's certain things that they don't have to deal with for us that maybe live in the cities that they don't have to deal with for living in a community surrounded by people just like you. So yes, there are benefits to being in a cult, but the negatives far outweigh the benefits. And that's what you have to say to people that try to bring this up as a defense for the cult, is that you have to remind them that the negatives far exceed the benefits. And we're Muslim, so the biggest negative is that we're not practicing proper Islam. We're committing shirk. We're committing bid'ah, right? These things that could cause us to go to hell. That's the biggest negative out of any situation. Other negatives include the stuff, the personal atrocities and heinous oppressions, like buzzwords that they like to use, that people suffer inside the cult. That's right. And another tricky thing that needs to be understood is that it's possible that in a cult, the majority of the people don't actually suffer these oppressions, right? Not everybody in TMOA gets jumped and beat up. Not everybody in TMOA, say, gets their family separated from them or all these different things. But everybody in a TMOA cult is being financially abused right now, right? Count up 10% of your income for the last 40 years, right? For those who've been in the Jamaat for 40 years, who've been working steady jobs for 40 years, who've been making, let's say a person making like a little bit of money, makes, let's just say $30,000 a year for the last 40 years, paying 10% of that is $3,000 a year. Times 40 is $120,000, I believe. Okay. So someone said they paid at least $120,000 over 40 years, and they don't own a house where they could have bought a house for their family, that their kids could inherit it, that they could have generational wealth. In 40 years, their children, their grandchildren could have had property and assets that they could pass on to their children and grandchildren, right? That's financial abuse, right? You have 4 generations of Muslims that, even if they didn't suffer the major abuses in TMOA, they've suffered generational stunting. Their whole family bloodline has been stunted from growth, right? Where people just now are like going to school, graduating, people that are leaving the TMOA. So like there's that aspect of it as well. So yes, there are benefits, but the negatives exceed the benefits. And there was one more question is, will they apologize for what they did to us? Not in this world. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And that would be a form of justice in this world, is if the leaders of TMOA at any point recognize the falsehood, recognize the oppressions. And this is what happens in the real world too, where say organizations, you know, they have some kind of dark past that they've done. And there's new leadership, or they're trying to change their image, and they will actually apologize to the people that they affected in the past. You know, under new management, we are sorry for what happened in the past. We take full responsibility, blah, blah, blah. That would even be like, okay, at least they recognize they're wrong. But as with all oppressors, you know, and it's you know what, it's really sad when you think about it, because whenever you think of oppressors and tyrants, you think of who? You think of Firaun. Even Firaun, before he died, was trying to like, you know, cop a plea. But these people are so arrogant that they won't even cop a plea. They won't even say, hey, I'm wrong. And I'll end on this, and people can think about it and talk about it. Which one of any of the TMOA leaders in the history of TMOA has said, I made a mistake? Who said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake? I'm not aware of it. I wonder if anybody's aware of any time any leader in TMOA has ever said, I'm sorry, or I made a mistake, or I was wrong. That's how you, that's a sure sign of a tyrant. And what did Hussein Adams go to school for? Yeah, he went to school for, what do you call it? Gosh, the secretaries for legal people. I forget what it's called. But yeah, that he went to school for that, legal secretary. And I think something else. I forget what else, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what you go to school for unless you use what you go to school for. You know, there's people that go to school and get their, you know, their what do you call it, their bar, and they never actually practice law. That doesn't make them a lawyer, really. Like, technically they're a lawyer, but if you never practice law and you never do practice law, you're actually not a lawyer. If you get a medical degree, but you actually don't actually practice medicine ever in your life, then whatever. But yeah, I think that's it. If there's any other last questions, I'll hang on just to deal with the YouTube lag. If there's any other questions, please pop them in. If anybody has anything to say, go ahead and say it, and we'll sign off if there's nothing. Paralegal, there you go. He's a paralegal. All right, so I think we're all good on the questions. Okay. Thanks for joining. We had a good amount of people, and I'd like to have this more often. And again, I have stuff that I'm prepared to talk about, and it'll be from this book. Yep, 1 second, buddy. Hold on. But if anybody else gets the book, you can come with your own topics from it to talk about. Or if you just want anything else to talk about, come. Try to join early, type it in there, or talk about it, and we can have open conversations about anything. Like, if someone else wants to present something, if you have my number, you can send me a message like, hey, I want to talk about this week. I'll put some slides together and we can talk about it. You know, I want it to be an more open conversation, because I want this to be, I want people to see the benefit of just talking about this stuff. There's so much benefit in just talking about this stuff. Because we all had the same experiences, but we also had different experiences, and we also have different perspectives. There's certain things that people will see that, like, you know, I personally would never even think of, and it's just like, it's eye-opening. And some of us have been through different stages of this process that we can kind of give advice to others. And the thing is, real quick before I get into this, and the people that are into psychology and sociology and those types of things will know more about this than me, because my major is business. But there's no like set path to dealing with like exiting an abusive or a cult like situation. There's no like, oh, step 1 this, step 2 this, step 3 this, and then like you're at the finish line. Everybody has a different path. It happens in different order, right? One person might leave the cult and like they feel real angry. Another person might leave the cult and feel real sad. but then their sadness turns into happiness. And then, but their happiness then turns to anger. While the other person might go through angry, sad, happy, back to angry. Everybody goes through a different process, but talking with each other, we've all been through one of these stages. You know, we can talk about it, learn from it, help others, and inshallah get to the point where I think, in my opinion, the light at the end of the tunnel is where we all get to a point where we can help others, whether it be our other family members or whether it be just strangers. Baina said, Shukran for doing this. Alhamdulillah, this is don't thank me. This is all I'm just trying to get. I'm a little selfish. I'm trying to get my blessings from Allah. That's it. Right. Recovery has no blueprint. That's a perfect way to say it. Remember that phrase, everybody. Recovery has no blueprint. Recovery has no blueprint. All right. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر